And you have to understand, during this whole time frame, from the time that I got married, I was dumb, stupid, ugly. You couldn't cuss at me because I would go off. But any other name you could think of, that's how he would come at me.
Welcome to the Called by God podcast with Adney Godet and myself, Nixon Sylvain. This show is about dialogues of biblical characters and testimonies of Christians who submitted to the will of God. Each week, we bring on one guest so that they can share their story of how they were called by God. I hope this show inspires you. Enjoy. Hello, world. Welcome to another week of Elizabeth Stewart Williams' testimony. I hope you enjoy this episode. So sit back and enjoy the ride. Be blessed. You know, because I have a question that I want to ask. Like, I think it's going to bless somebody.
Yeah.
Because I know you've been violated. Because I have a sibling that's been violated as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so my sister, she took the other direction. She decided that she liked women. So instead of, because she felt like she couldn't be with any men because of what happened to her when she was young. She's like, okay, I'm going left. I don't want to deal with no men. And then for you, on the other hand, you knew who you was as a Christian. You believe that it was a test. Whereas some women, and there's, people deal with their situation different, where you might have a woman or a girl that decided to sleep with multiple men because she's been violated. She's like, okay, well, I'm gonna just sleep with anybody and have different baby daddies. So you took a different approach, which I like about your story. And I know you got into a relationship, with your husband. But I want to know, like, how did he win you over? How did you not like have that? Look, I've been, I already went through what I went through, and I want to trust no man. Or was it because he had the image of a Christian or Christ-like, or because he was in the body? I want you to explain that, because I want people to really understand this.
He worked. He had to work. So, like, for instance, when I say come, like, he showed up at worship. It wasn't like, you're not just going to talk to me. That's how it was. I was like, you're not just going to talk to me, right? He would come, hey, and then at the same time, I also was introduced to him at one point. But I was still like, it's me and Jesus. Like, I'm good walking with him, right? He would show up. He would show up found out where I worked, show up at my job. I have roses. He show up. Yeah. Like, it wasn't, he put in some work. He found out where my dad was, preaching at, or where he was teaching at. He show up there. He even took my mom, grocery shopping. Like, he put in some work, and it took some, and lived at the church. We lived there. Actually, he was baptized by some of the pioneers in the church. We were having a crusade for Christ, and who was at his was at the baptism was brother Maxwell, brother Evans, brother who else? Pretty much anyone major that you could think of in the body, because it was Body of Christ in Houston. And he got baptized there, taught. He was taught by the great, what you would consider the greats, right? Yeah, no, he put that work in.
All right, so you could talk about now when he said, because you made me wait, I'm gonna make you wait. I'm waiting.
It was no, so I called my mom and I said, hey, it's not gonna work. This ain't gonna work. Like, because of what especially because of what I went through, I was in no, like, if I saw signs, like, I'm out. Like, that's what it was. Like, okay, you gonna act this way? Be blessed. I wish you well and on your journey. And I'm out. You know what I'm saying? I didn't play. But here it is. My mother is sitting here telling me, you didn't just marry him, you married God. And because I understood what that meant. So what that meant was, because I'm married to God, I gotta put in the work, because true love works. It's a work that goes into that. And so my mom asked me a series of questions. Did he put his hands on you? Did he do this? Did he do that? No. She said, okay, well, your better is not here. You've just started on your worst. And I cried. I cried. And I was like, why? And that goes back to that question. Why? And then from there was like I never had a honeymoon period. I don't know what that is. When people talk about that, I'm like, that's cute. Don't know what that is. It was a turbulent. That's when I found out everything that was presented in premarital, that was a lie. What was presented was straight front. Like it was, I was like, wait a minute. So because I didn't have any debt. The only thing I had was student loans. I didn't use credit cards. Like so I'm sitting here looking like, wait a minute. So that's not your account? Oh, that's your dad's account. They have the same name. So how much credit do you like? So what's going on? Everything was a lie. Everything. Down to the car. Everything was a lie. And it was like, okay, how do I move from this, God? Because I couldn't trust anything. Like, even like I could not trust anything. He would do stuff like, we had a joint account together. He would take all the money out of the account. He would take all their money out of the account. There was an incident where he was like, the setup, or the way that it was set up was, there was someone else that was supposed to handle the family accounts, and I was supposed to give them their checks, which was his mom at the time. And I was like, no, that's not gonna happen. It was if you could take that moment and put it in a movie, it would be unbelievable. And it was like, oh my, like I said, so you don't have your own account. You don't have this, you don't have that. No, didn't have any of that. So everything that was presented to me was a lie. And I literally was like, I at one point I was like, God, just take me. Like, what? Just take me, because what is this? What is this? So I'm struggling with not only from the physical perspective, but then also the financial. It would be stuff like our first year of marriage, we went through like 2 apartments. What we would go through is like, I would literally go to work and I would come back home and he's moved us out of the whole apartment. And I didn't know. And I'm coming home to like a note saying, hey, we've moved. Come to this address. And so I would go to the address and I got people clapping saying, oh, this is so sweet. Y'all are in a new place. So he would move me, and we would move to a new apartment, and we would be in a new apartment in a new place. He did that with my vehicles. I had a truck. We had just are about to pay that truck off, right? Took my truck in. He was supposed to get an oil change on it. Took my truck. Now he would get the car that I like. So I love the Jag. He got the Jag. But then guess who? So he picked me up. I'm coming. They're all outside clapping. And at that time, you don't, or what I was taught was, you don't embarrass your husband, or you don't have conversations, or what you do is privately, you'll talk later. But if I know what I know now, I would have been like, I'm not signing for that. Right. But they all came out clapping. All you have to do is sign here and it's yours. And I'm looking like, what is this? That's a $700 car note. Why would I do that? But that's the stuff that he did. And so throughout my marriage, it was almost like we moved multiple times. It got to the point where I said, you know what? You can't do this again. Like, if you do this again, like, I'm going to be livid. Like, we need to be a part of it. And it was a literal work. It was like, I would tell God, okay, God, like, cause I don't know how to do, I don't know how to do this. And you have to walk me through it, because I'm angry, but then two, it's like, I'm embarrassed. Three, like, I don't know what's going on. And every step was something new of drama, every step. And it was just like, what in the world? And so it got to the point, there were times like he made what he determined what he made. So he worked for the railroad. So he determined what he made. And he wasn't going to work. So it got to the point where we were just living off of me. And I'm coming home to eviction notices on our door. And I'm like, what is this? Right? So again, we're steady, things are steady happening that I'm like, what? So I don't know what so my first 2 years was like it was like a horror movie. And I'm like stressed, like, went from one, but God, this is the thing, God would bless me so I was a paralegal. I was supposed to go to law school, but I put that off. So as a paralegal, I went from one law firm. God blessed me to get a position with the federal government. So I learned in different sectors what type of law, because I said, okay, I'll just take this time to determine what type of lawyer I wanted to be, because that was the idea. But God, so he progressed me in that way, but it got to the point to where it was like, it was so stressful. And it was like, okay, like, I need to get out of here. So it was like after we were together almost 2 years, and I said, I just can't do it. And people are telling me, you can't divorce. And he would always tell me this, you can't divorce, I haven't cheated. And I will tell anybody who tells you that, run, because that means they are. Right. So he would tell me all the time, you can't, he knew it was bad. You can't go anywhere. I haven't cheated. When it got really heavy, I'll come home to a note, and he's completely moved the home, and I'm in another apartment, and they're outside clapping. And he had that much, because I'm looking like, how are you able to do it? It's my credit. Like, how are you able to do it? But during that time frame, the way that they looked at credit was, especially if y'all were married, like, you could take my social and put it with my husband. It wouldn't even show up on my credit report. It would show up on his. You would have to run the number. And so I went through it. So finally, at one point, came home. It was eviction notice. He playing video games. I'm like, this is it. Like, we just need to end this. And I was like, I guess I'm just gonna be single for the rest of my life, because that's all everybody was like. You can't, do this. And now that those portions of the scripture. So this is the thing. My parents taught me. They taught me clearly how to go back to the scriptures and study for myself. Some things, you get lazy with at times, and you just pick up what people say. But when you're going through it, you should take the time to really look at what the scriptures are saying, so that it can apply appropriately to your life. So during that time frame, honestly, we should have separated, because if we would have separated, I feel like I would have found out more. But everybody was telling me you can't do that, which wasn't true.
I'm curious. I'm curious. I'm sorry. I got to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Because I've been married for over 10 years now. And again, like I said, I got a real crowd out here. And I know someone out there saying like, Nick, you got to ask her. You got to ask her the question. Because we know when people come together, accept the Lord, build a house, they labor in vain that do build it. You know, this is something that we tell people as Christians, like marry somebody that's Christian, build a foundation. And I know somebody that likes saying like, wow, they did everything right. She's a Christian. He's a Christian. They got God. It's supposed to work. But we know as marriage, we're going to have our ups and downs. But man, where was God in this? And how did you guys even try to come together to resolve it? Like walk us through that. Because somebody might be going through it right now. They need to know.
It wasn't an authentic, I would say, and I don't want to so speak to where he was, but in action. Okay. So in action, it was not an authentic love for Christ that I believe he possessed. An authentic love. So one that's balanced. And then of course we'll get to types of narcissism, but one that's authentic is one that is like, your desire and your goal is to really try to do what God has called you to do. When you're authentic in it, but when you're about manipulation and getting over, it doesn't matter. So that part doesn't even register. Actually, the joy is I got over. Like I was able to get by versus, and I think that's the thing that people have to, you know, married people a lot of times are quick to say, you know, you got to do this, and this. But you don't understand. You really got to look at the intent of the person that you're with. So like if I told this same scenario, if I told this same scenario with someone who was really desiring to have a relationship with God, then the work looks different versus the manipulation, which leads me to, that's what happened. So after, because those first 2 years, I'm just like, okay, well, maybe he doesn't understand. And those first 2 years were hoping, okay, let's try this. All right. So maybe he doesn't. There are some things that I found out in the family that he experienced and he went through. Okay, let's work here. Let's go. Let me try this. Right. Let me attempt to do this. Let me, everything you could think of, from counseling to, us trying, me saying, hey, let's go on a trip. He didn't want to go on trips. Let's do this. And you have to understand, during this whole time frame, from the time that I got married, I was dumb, stupid, ugly. You couldn't cuss at me because I would go off. But any other name you could think of, that's how he would come at me. And so I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, which again goes back to really, there should have been a separation, because it was clear coercive control.
Matthew's 18.
Yeah. So I should have, during that time frame, because it was toxic. It wasn't a good thing. But what I did was, I was like, okay, as I stay and I pray, and God will work me through this. We'll work through it. But it takes two. It takes two. And when you're with someone who willingly, like, so I give an example. We had, rent was due. I came home. I changed it up. I did everything you could possibly think of. And I was like, okay, you take care of this one bill and I'll take care of the rest. You take care of this one bill. And he had a Corvette. He had a Corvette when I met him. And I don't believe in changing any man. I've never believed that. I believe you respect where people are in their journey and where they are. And God is the only one that can change a person. Right. So believe who you see. And so me coming in saying, hey, you got to get rid of this car. I was never that person. But he had a Corvette. Fine. Okay. You pay this one bill. He took the money and he bought brand new pipes for his Corvette. And I'm like, what happened with the rent? Did you pay the rent? Rent wasn't paid. And so I was just going through it. And so finally I got to the point where I was like, okay, I can't. I don't care what nobody is saying. It is what it is. Because I can't. And that is when you're dealing with somebody who's manipulating, that is when we got into our first physical altercation. And because I was like, we just need to, and I was blunt. I was more blunt than I am now. I was like, hey, we just need to call it what it is. And what this is, it's just not going to work. And we just need to let it go. And I'm headed to the bedroom. And that's when he grabbed me up by my neck, threw me up against the wall, told me, if you ever leave me, I'll kill you. I'm the type that is like, again, the lineage of David. Peter is in me. I'm like, and then I'm athletic. So is this what we doing today? Okay. And I went, like, we had an all-out fight. We had an all-out fight to the point we lived on the 3rd floor. I literally opened up the window to jump out. He had pulled me back in. But we had an all-out drag out. And then I was able to get away because he took my keys. I was able to get away. Called my mom. Did not tell my mom what was going on. But she could see it because I had a black eye. And so my mom, she came and she looked at me. And she asked me, she said, she didn't ask me if he hit me because I wasn't even going there. Because as Black women, we are taught you keep it private, because if you open it up, you're going to open your family up to something you might not want at the time, right? And I'm sitting here thinking, hey, if I so my dad, don't get it twisted, my dad is a minister, my brother, evangelist ministers, but if this gets out to them, like, this ain't gonna be good. And then it'll get out to the family. It's not gonna be good. So my mother, she looked at me, she said, what do you want to do? You tell me what you want to do. I'll support you. And so I was like, Mom, I was like, hey, let me stay here, in the hotel. So she paid for me to stay there for like a week. I said, let me just, Now, by this time, my ex had called my dad, my friends, and basically was like, flipped it and made it seem like it was me. Like I was the one that was, having these issues. But I was just like, listen, I didn't discuss it with anybody. I only discussed it with him, not knowing he was making these phone calls. So my dad, being a counselor, suggested, and my dad didn't even know what happened. They're just thinking I went off on him because, again, I'm from that lineage. Like, and what my people knew about me is I'm not just going to accept anything. So when that occurred, that time, my dad was like, baby, you got to calm down. He didn't know that he had put hands on me. And I didn't change that viewpoint, because that's just not what you do at the time. So we went to counseling. We went to counseling for up to 6 months. And that counselor looked at me. We had one session, and then finally, at a session, she looked at me. She was a Christian counselor, and she said, he needs to get diagnosed. I was like, what? She was like, there's a disconnect. I said, didn't understand her at the time. And I said, well, she said, try to do what you can do, but there's a disconnect. And I don't think he'll ever really get it or understand. And so I was like, okay, at that time, I was like, but he had did everything that I had requested. He went to all the counseling, different things like that. So when he knew or he felt that I would possibly leave, things got a little bit better. It was a little bit better. But if I know what I know now, so we're going into a good 4 years of marriage. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to law school. I looked into the law schools. I began to put my paperwork in. I told him, hey, I'm about to go to law school. Then all of a sudden he was like, hey, I want to have a baby. And I'm like, God does not want this marriage to have, God does not want this marriage to have a baby. And he was like, no, I really want a baby. This is it. And I was making sure I was on birth control. What's not going to happen is that, again, because we had come so far. And when I tell you like the work that was done. So here it is now, 4 years later, which we're just now, coming to. It was, it was an uphill battle. So now to bring a child into this, I was like, And then literally 3-4 months in, after he said that, I get pregnant. I was like, what? So I'm like, what in the world? And then that's when the abuse really occurred. And that's when the abuse really started. And it wasn't until I got pretty big. So I don't know the feeling of when you're hungry and you ask your spouse to go get something to eat and he brings you food. I didn't experience that. I didn't experience even just going to the store and saying, hey, okay, we're going to have a baby shower. Let's pick some stuff out. It was all out fights. Like he would get angry and he would go in on me. And what I started noticing is as I got bigger with child, that's the more bolden he became. And that was the first time that he had ever called. I was like 8 months pregnant and we're on the highway in traffic and he's calling me the B word. And I looked and because I can't handle that. And I got out the car on the highway, my pregnant cell. He's like, no, don't do, those were the stuff. Like, so it just progressively just got bad. It got bad. But the blessed, so during this time frame, I'm pregnant. He's calling, like I said, every day was you're dumb, stupid, ugly. But when I would go to work, which this is why I say when you stay with God, and I'm steady going to church. I'm steady live because I did not understand. I did not understand like why I felt like I was being punished. And I was like, okay, but he would call me every name that you could think of, except for cuss words. But then I would go to work. So I took the TRE, the train into Dallas. And it would be amazing the amount of compliments that I would get. And I'll be like, he's called me ugly and fat that morning. I'm with your child. And here it is. I would just be there and it would be the nicest, the sweetest people. And they'd be like, oh my goodness, you are so pretty, and it would be like, and I'll be like looking like, and one day, what he said rattled me because, you're spreading. And he said things and I'm like, I couldn't see my feet at this time. And this man, he stopped and he said, I just want to tell you. He said, do you want me to tie your shoe? And I'm like crying because I couldn't reach down and tie my shoe. And he looked at me. He's like, oh, he said, let me tell you, you are so beautiful. He said, you are a beautiful pregnant woman. And I was like, right. And then I stopped crying and I was like, right? I know I'm pretty. Like, he don't know what he talking about, you know? And those were the things that God would just steady send me things along the way. And then even being pregnant, like I don't know what it feels like to be just taken care of at that time. I did not know what it felt like to be taken care of. I paid the bills. You know what I mean? Like, if I wanted to eat, I had to figure out how to eat. He didn't provide in that manner. Like, so it was almost like, there were times where the only time that I would be like, oh, I really want something, he would go out and get something. It was because he was hungry too. So it wasn't like, oh, it's just me. I didn't have that. I didn't know what that was. And so, but I was blessed at work because it was a bunch of men who were married who had, they would laugh at me because I love pizza. My son has a birthmark pizza slice. That's how much pizza I ate with him. And they would come with like whole pieces and I would just be like ecstatic. But that's how God sent people in my world and in my life when I was going through all of that and showed me, hey, no, I'm here for you. I'm here. And I think that's, as Christians, I don't think we understand, like, when you are not doing what God has called you to do, you don't know you are that person that is supposed to come into someone's world and help them at a time when I was going through a major test, one that it was a major test. And there are people who just showed up in my test that let me know God is still here. And as Christians, that's what we're supposed to do, is let people know, I know you're going through it, but God is still here. So here it is. I ended up having, and when you look back and people say, what's one regret? I had got to the point to where I was just like, I couldn't continue to work because I had some complications. So they were like, hey, you kind of need to go home. But I worked for the federal government. I had great benefits and I was moving up in a position, but something told me to go home. Now, if I look back, I wouldn't have went home. My mama begged. She was like, baby, don't do it. Like, you don't have that type of man. Every man is not meant to just take on the care of the household. I don't think people realize that, especially when you have one who struggles with certain things.
Especially if he's not taught how to be a man, right?
Yeah.
It tells us in the Bible that the older men, the same way it says for the older women to teach the younger, if he wasn't taught, just because he was baptized, again, remember what I said in the beginning, he wasn't discipled, he was baptized, right?
Yeah.
Because if he was taught, he would have understood his role as a husband. He would have understood his role, but he was your classic narcissist, which means he was a spoiled brat. Like, his family probably allowed him to get away with murder, right? And because he got away with murder, he knew how to line it up, right?
Yeah.
He knew how to paint the perfect picture to make people see what they wanted. He was the greatest illusionist.
That's it. We would go out and he would open doors. I used to call myself almost like a China doll. Like, even like before having my son, it was like he would go out. You would see us out and you would be like, oh my goodness, y'all are such a beautiful couple. He's opened up doors. He's smiling, this and that. And as soon as we got behind closed doors, it was, he wouldn't talk to me. Or he would, it was just, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and you're looking like, but it was all for show because he wanted to make sure that it looked a certain kind of way. And it was amazing. Even it got to the point to where I had to check myself because I was being a party to that. to the way that he was operating, because I'm trying to, I'm trying to get to a good point. And that's the thing, is when you're in a relationship. So coercive control is a form of abuse. Coercive control, they seclude you from your family. Financial abuse is involved in that. You're going through a lot of emotional, like, for instance, you're looking at the sky and the sky is blue and they're literally telling you the sky is green. Like, that's the steady mental anguish that they'll steady put you through. And it's not a normal, a lot of women or when there's a presence of potential moving to domestic physical abuse, you normally see coercive control right before that time frame. And so, I mean, I went through it, and I'll back up a little bit. I would be really frustrated, really angry. But my mom will call every day. Hey, baby, how are you feeling? Okay, you gonna live right, regardless of whatever. And I would be so angry. I'm like, Mom, he called me this, he did this, he said this. And she would say, well, are you that? Notice it's the questions again. It's the why. Well, why is that? Why is that occurring? And a lot of times I would just want to wipe the why away and let's just go with, let's just walk. Let's just try to get to a point where everything's okay. But it was never peace. It was never peace in the home. And so it was almost like, so my mom got to the point, she said, hey, let's stop talking about him. What about you? Like, what are things you can work on? Stop focusing on him. Let's talk about you. So I got to the point. So I said, you know what? Okay, you're right. It took a time. It took a while because I was so, I believe that's when I really start, after the hope had passed of, okay, this can be better. I was getting to a point where I was just like, Lord, I don't think that it can. That's when my mom was able to speak into me, and she began to like sign me up for stuff to like present, like, and I'm like, cause she was like, okay, you keep moving with God. And I was like, why would you sign me up for this Ladies' Day program? And I'm going through what I'm going through, but then I would have to study. And so and I was taught, what you teach, you got to live. So I'm like, okay. I said, oh, well, let me sweep around my own front door. Because I know there are some things that I can clean up, right? And so I got to the point to where he would tell me, oh, you're so ugly. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I could look better. So I would get a gym membership. And I would begin to like, I worked on myself. I actually became very healthy. He would tell me like, you talk too much, you get so angry, you get mad. And I'd be like, well, do I do that? And then I said, you know what? I'm going to work on me. You know what? I'm going to be better. So I took classes. I did all, like, I was like, literally, I took what he would say and I would say, I'll flip it and I would look at myself and I'll say, okay, let me be better. Let me work on this, and this. And I stopped focusing on him, which led me to go to law school, or attempt to go to law school. And then he did another wrench and was just like, I want, we're going to have a baby, this and that. And I was like, no, like, no. And then God allowed it to happen. And I was like, how? Like, why? Why would that happen? And I was like, so I knew it was a boy. I knew it was a boy from the day that I found out. I felt that was like life is in me. I felt it, loved it. Like it was amazing, but I went through it, right? So I didn't have the experiences of what other women had. I had to take care of myself. But I got to a point where I had to go home. So I'm at home and I'm like, okay, any time that I showed happiness or care or joy, that was removed. Like he liked to control the temperament in the home. And I began to kind of go deep into depression. And then so people ask me, so during this time frame, I'm like, okay, now all the bills are on him because I went home. And I purposely, my mom said, don't do it, which I look back and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have. But what I didn't want was, I'm going to have this baby. He's not going to work. I'm going to have to take care of him and this baby. I was like, no. But so this is the thing with him. He would get me back. So when I went home, so the car, the Jag that I had been paying for $600, $700 a month on, because it fell on me. We were like 2 to 3 payments away from paying it off. He took my Jag and traded it in and came back with he didn't take his Corvette, who was a 2-seater. He took my car, traded it in. And I'm looking at him, rubbing my belly, and I was like, I'm not gonna have my child. I'm not gonna have my child. So that's the stuff, like those are the things that he would do. So a person who has this type of personality disorder, they'll hold it, and then they'll get you back at a later date or a later time. So a lot of things that I was going through was because he was mad about something that I did previously, and he was going to get me back.
We got to get you on another part. We're running out of time. We got to get you back on. Like, I Andy and I sitting back, we like, oh man, like it's getting good. Your story is good, but we're going to wrap it up. Do you mind coming back to continue sharing your story?
Yes. You have to get to the point. It gets way worse.
Stay tuned for more as we delve more into Elizabeth's powerful, God-given testimony. See you next week. That's it for now. But before we go, please continue to listen, subscribe, and share our podcast. Also, if you want to support our show, please scroll down to the bottom of the show notes and click on the link that says Buy Me a Coffee. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you for listening. And remember, God is good all the time, and all the time, God is good. And also, Jesus Christ loves you. Thank you. Wait, there's more. What if today was your last day on earth? Would you be ready to meet your Maker? Well, Jesus Christ has given us the good news. He told his disciples in Mark 16:15-16, and he said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He who believes and is baptized will be saved, but he who does not believe will be condemned." Jesus Christ has instructed his children to share and preach the gospel, which is the good news, which means that Jesus Christ came and that he was sacrificed, he was buried, and he rose on the third day. By believing and by repenting and confessing and being baptized, you will be saved. So it is your choice. Jesus Christ will not force you. You've heard the message, you heard personal testimonies, but this is your opportunity to give your life to Christ. Don't wait until tomorrow, because tomorrow is not promised. So I hope you submit to the will of God and give your soul to Christ. Be blessed.